I've been taking it slow. Yeah, I know God knows I need it.
Hi everybody, welcome to Ampersand Unique Gifts and Home Decor. My name is Sarah. So if you are new here, when I named my business, it was about the ampersand, the and, giving things new life, new purpose, and about repurposing. So while I do still love to thrift, I love to resell, repurposing is my true love. And today we are going to take a whole bunch of kitchen items and we're going to find new ways to turn them into home decor. So I hope that you stick around. If you are not already a subscriber, then consider clicking subscribe and that notification bell, and you'll see every time we upload a new video. So let me know in the comments what you think. If you've ever done any of these items, which one's your favorite, and I'll see you on the flip side.
Our first repurpose is so simple but so cute. So just taking a vintage salt and pepper shaker, we're going to use that lid like a tiny flower frog. So I have some dried lavender that I actually picked up from a vendor at the mall where I have my antique and vintage booth. And I just think it is absolutely perfect. It smells amazing because it is actual real lavender, but I'm just breaking the pieces off to come up with kind of similar but varying heights to put in there. And I just kind of work through around that. And then once I had it as full as I could get it, I felt like it needed something additional. So I am just wrapping this lace ribbon from the Dollar Tree around here. So I'm just going to use a simple, just standard, whatever you call, just a regular bow like you're tying a shoelace. But I felt like that was exactly what I needed. I just kind of fluffed it up a little bit and trimmed the tails. And then that gave us exactly what I needed. Is this not the cutest way to repurpose these little salt and pepper shakers? You can find them all around the thrift stores. Our next kitchen item repurpose are these 4 zinc lids, and I am going to use a napkin. It is actually from DecoupageNapkins.com, and you want to make sure that you get the top layer. This one had 3 layers, and I'm actually not having trouble getting the first layer that I'm going to use. I was going to try to show you that there were 3 layers, but the bottom 2 are sticking, so I finally give up and just pull off that top one. But some napkins are 2 layers and some are 3, but you really need to make sure that you just have the top layer with the design. This lavender I thought would go great with my spring thought with the lavender salt and pepper shaker. So I'm going to go ahead and just cut it. The great thing about these napkins is it's 4 identical designs, so it makes it easy if you want to do a set of something. So I just kind of put it down in there and then use my fingernail to push around and create an edge. It seemed a lot easier than trying to measure and guess. So once I did that, I just cut along that line that my finger made the impression. So you can see there as I just cut around. So once I cut it out, I'm going to pop it down here into my lid and make sure that it's truly the size that I thought it was and that it's absolutely perfect. Isn't that just the neatest? So I am going to get that out and then use it as a template. Since all 4 of these lids are the same size, I can just use that first one as a template, and I just hold it over the napkins and cut each one the same size. But even though these are 4 identical pictures, I do hold it over a little bit different section in each one of the corners because I want these 4 coasters to coordinate but not necessarily look identical. And yes, I said coasters, so if you hadn't already guessed, that is actually what we're going to make here. So I cut all 4 of these out, but I need to do something inside those lids because if I just decoupage this straight in there, that gray is going to cause our colors to be extremely muted, and I want them to pop and be bright. So I'm going to paint the inside of each one of these lids. I'm just using a very fine artist brush because I want to make sure that I'm only painting the bottom. I don't want to get it up on the sides. So I'm going to do each one of those and then let it dry. before we begin the process of actually decoupaging our napkins into the inside of these jar lids. Okay, you can see here that I have already done the first one, and now I'm moving on to the second one. And I am using Debi's Design Diary Liquid Patina in the color Crystal Clear Chandelier as my decoupage medium here. And I'm just putting it in a kind of a starter strip on the top, and then I am putting my paper down in there and making sure it stick, and then I'm going back in and adding that decoupage medium over the rest of it. And I do that just so that if I have to pick it up and move it, then I've not already stuck the whole thing down. I just use that little starter strip, and I'm just kind of patting it with my finger. The wise thing to do here would be to use maybe like a ball of saran wrap or something, a Ziploc bag. You don't realize how much your finger actually has texture and can tear your napkin here, but I'm just kind of very lightly patting that decoupage medium down on the top and just making sure that everywhere is adhered. So just kind of give you a little hint of what they're going to look like, and I'm going to go ahead and get these other two finished. I've allowed these to dry completely before moving on to the next step. So we are going to put resin in there on top. So I did seal them again once they were there. I really wanted to seal them with that liquid patina, and now we're going to use the amazing resin. It's a 2-part resin, and you mix equal parts together. This is actually an old set from where my daughter was making some items a while back, but I thought we'd go ahead and see how it was, if it still was not a solid piece. And I do have to admit that it was a little thicker than it was in the beginning when it was new, like 4 years ago, but it still worked perfectly. So just spoiler alert, I didn't have any trouble. So I'm using these 2 little cups that are kind of semi-clear to see what my volume is, because I'm not actually measuring it, just kind of doing it, eyeing it here. And so I'm going to pour them each into the little cups, again, equal parts. And then I will mix it into a larger cup so I can stir it. If I thought they would both fit into one of those cups, I would just go ahead and put the side A into the B cup or the side B into the A cup. But I think it was probably going to be a little bit too much when it was combined to fit into one of those cups. But then I just took a butter knife and I stirred it until it was completely mixed together. It was probably about 2 minutes. And now I am pouring it in there on top of that picture. So I'm just pouring it straight there in the lid. And once I have what I think is enough, and again, it was really thick. At this point, I wasn't sure if I was going to really have something to show you or not. But I kind of bang it on the table. I get the bubbles out. I'm moving it around to make sure it's covering all over. I'm going to do the same thing to all 4 of them. I kind of spin it around, just making sure that it's running down around the edge, if that makes sense. And then again, I kind of pop it on the table just to pop those bubbles. And here they are, completely dry. It says it takes 24 to 48 hours. So this was overnight. So I'm not touching down inside them or anything. I don't want to risk getting a fingerprint in them. So, we'll continue to let them dry completely. But I want to go ahead and put the bottoms of these. I mean, obviously, if somebody's going to set this on their table to use as a coaster, we want to make sure that the lid itself has a soft bottom here. And you can use, I've made these before with a self-adhering cork board, so that makes a really good bottom. But this is just kind of that sticky velvet. So I am going to make 4 of these and put this on the bottom of each of them. I actually have a giant roll of the sticky velvet and will use it on lots of different projects today. It's my favorite thing to put on the bottom or the back of things that I make or repurpose. This next bunch of stuff I could have actually just called the nests. I probably could have done an entire video on taking rusty, crusty kitchen gadgets and putting bird nests in them. So at Christmas, you know, we stick Christmas trees and bottle brush trees inside everything. In the spring, we do the same thing but with nests. And I know that somewhere I have in my stash some already made bird nests, and that's something that you can do. I think you can probably pick those up pretty cheaply, but I'm trying to really work through some of my supplies. So I have this Spanish moss. I don't know if this was, I think it was actually from Walmart, might have been from the dollar store, but I am just spinning it around and making a nest-like shape. And then I have this greenery that I'm cutting pieces off and poking down in it, because of course if you've ever seen a bird nest, you know they grab all kinds of different things to help I started to say decorate, but that's, I think it has more to do with functionality than look, but for me it gives it that additional color. And then I have these little ceramic birds that I've picked up, and I'm going to be adding those. Here I have this vintage ice cream scoop, and I'm going to do the same thing, only this is actually some green moss, and it is so old that it is so brittle it just kind of breaks. There's not really much maneuvering it, but I do kind of cram it down in there. And you will see at the reveal at the end, I did actually swap out the bird. I felt like it needed some color, so I did swap out that bird for something a little bit more colorful and add some additional flowers to it. And now I'm just going to take the rest of my things. I'm kind of grabbing some floral and cutting pieces off and cutting leaves out just to add that dimension and color. But here you go, you can kind of watch me as I figure out how to make some of these old kitchen gadgets into home decor. So keeping in line with wanting each one to be unique and have its own look, I used some raffia for my nest here, and then I put some of that green grass covered with the Spanish moss, and then I also added in some little fabric strips because of course you know no two bird nests look the same, and I just wanted each one to have its own look. And let me know, do you guys decorate all over your house with different things? So even though this is a potato masher, would you have this sitting on the shelf in your living room? And do you decorate with bird nests in the spring also? And we'll use more of that flour sack towel as a bow wrapped around the top. So these two I made and poked the little nest in there, and I thought that rather than birds, because these are pretty tiny, I am going to make eggs. And I know you can buy foam or tiny plastic eggs. I think you can actually even get them at the Dollar Tree, but I am going to use what I have. So I have IOD's Air Dry Clay, and I'm just going to make my own tiny little eggs. So I will just pick off some little pieces, rolling them into kind of an egg shape, and then I will paint them, and I think they turn out just perfect. To get my blue color, I'm using the Fusion All-in-One paint in the color Heirloom. It's very similar to that duck blue color, and I think it was a beautiful spring color. My little clay eggs are not completely dry, so I was easily able to poke that toothpick in there, but it just gave me something to hold on to while I painted them, and then I stuck them in a little foam block. Once the eggs were dry, it was as simple as putting them in the nest. Now, I did actually go back with all of my nests and find a way to glue the items together so that it would make them a little bit more sturdy. These are actually going to be for sale, so I want to make sure that they do hold together while at the same time someone could take them out without actually ruining the item. So I glued things together but didn't actually glue them to the kitchen gadget. Our next kitchen item repurpose is this tiered tray, and I actually made this like a year ago or more, and then it just sat in my stash. So I decided this was time to give it its new life, and I actually completely sealed in both of those pans with Debi's Design Diary Salvation Solution in the color Clear. And now I am going to use the color Haint Blue by Debi's Design Diary in conjunction with Jami Ray Vintage. This is an extremely old can of this, and I accidentally this year left my paint out in the shop, and these ones that have a sealer in them, it's not a good idea for them to freeze, and I think I probably say that multiple times ever since this happened. But it's very usable. It's just kind of a little bit weirder than it was. And what the Debi's Design Diary chalk base paint, and you know, it will cover. So I just wanted to show here what the first coat looks like, and it does have a lot more streaks, but similar to milk paint, once you get that second coat on, it starts to cover much better. This can that I'm using is actually one of the very first ones that I ever bought when they came out with the Cottage color. And I had also mentioned in my other video, I don't know if they have changed. You can see all the rust around my can. I don't know whether or not they have changed the formula. They never said anything specifically about it, but I have found that the newer bottles, like so the barn quilt there that I used in my last video, it does have better coverage. So I don't know, maybe it's a little bit different now, or I just have gotten better at using it, because when I first had some, especially using the white or the Haint Blue or even the vintage pink, they're very pale colors, I thought that I would never get the hang of it. But you can see here how much that second coat covers over that first coat. So, you know, I'm just kind of showing you here that it is getting that coverage that we're used to with the clay-based paint that don't have the sealer. One of the things I definitely miss with the regular clay-based paint is the wet distressing. So it is a lot harder to distress with that sealer. That's great. That's how wonderful that sealer is. So I'm using sandpaper here, and I'm just going over it. I'm bringing back some of that metal so that you can see it. And then of course, where I talked about it having that chunky rust, I wanted to bring some of that back as well before I do our next step. So I'm just trying to give this a little bit of an age to it. I'm really excited to be using this IOD transfer. It's the Rose Botanical, and I'm going to cut apart. There's different sizes. There's 3 different sizes of floral in this. So I'm using a little bit of the smaller ones and some of the medium ones. And I am just going to stick these on here. This is kind of an odd shape. So I have cut as close to the flower as I could, as well as cut anywhere that I could get cut into it so I can fold it in different places. I don't know, I'm doing a terrible job thinking there. But I went ahead, and it's kind of hard to hold it where the camera can see it. So I did this without you being able to sit and watch, because most of the time you just got a view of my arm. But I love the way it came out, and adding to that continued aged look. Even though that paint doesn't need a sealer, you really need to seal in your transfers. So I am using the antiquing glaze that we've used throughout this video. Got to admit, wish that I had just used a paintbrush instead of a rag, but I already had that rag that I'd been using, so I just continued to use it. But I just covered everything, and then I got a new clean rag and came back and wiped off all of the excess. So I got this beautiful silver plate ladle in a box of goodies from an auction, and then this little picture frame wall hanging I honestly think came from Walmart, but you can get these just about anywhere. And it was so easy to just get those tabs back and take that piece out. And the reason why that was important is, in spite of, whoops, got a little extra paint on me there. In spite of that, I think that faded whitewash was a fine color. I was really excited to use my new Fusion green in the color Carriage House. I think it just looks like a very vintage kitchen color. The way the light is here, it actually is kind of hard to tell what color it is, but I gave this just one coat all over. Okay, so the next piece required that we come out to the shop. This is the insert of the frame, and we want to put our spoon on here, but I don't want to see something screwed through this side, so we're going to actually drill a hole in the back. And then we'll drill a hole through here so that we can then attach the spoon from the back and then put this back inside our frame that is inside the house drying. So we're going to use the drill press to get our hole through our spoon. I clamped it down to make sure that the spoon didn't move. I put the size drill bit in that I needed, raised the tabletop up to where I needed it, and now I am just applying pressure gently with the drill press to poke the hole into the spoon without going all the way through. I'm just lightly distressing kind of a little bit around the edge. I didn't want to pull back the white necessarily, but I just wanted to give it a little bit of age and smooth out my paint. And so then once I did that, continuing on with that aging, we're going to give our frame some of the antiquing wax. And again, it's just as simple as wipe on, wipe off. And being completely impatient because that is still wet, I'm going to go ahead and start putting it back together. And I have to admit, until I went to drill a hole through it, I didn't even realize this was two pieces. This top piece that has the burlap on the other side, it was cork board. And then this one is kind of a little piece of MDF. I was going to try to put it in there so that the sticker side wasn't out, but apparently my hole isn't exactly in the middle, and so it didn't look like it was going to line up. But I'm putting that, and I'm holding those tabs with a screwdriver to make sure that they're really tight, because of course I want to make sure that once I have my spoon on there that there is no room for wiggle. And once the back is on, I put the spoon on, and there you go, absolutely beautiful. Our next project required us to be out in the shop, and so there were two things that I was hoping to find a cutting board to do. So the one is this project. So if you saw my short, my YouTube short about looking for a cutting board at Goodwill, this is actually what I wanted to do with it. So the plan was to take this cute little rusty crusty grater and put it upside down and create a towel rack, spoon holder, kitchen decor. And to be honest, I love the rustiness of this other side, but this is really sharp no matter which way you go. So being safe, we're gonna go with this side. It's not as patinaed. I could always paint it and rust it and give it that patina, or I could just go with it the way that it is and add some antiquing wax to just kind of dull down
the shine. It does look a lot shinier on here than it does even in real life. So this light is causing it to be kind of shiny. Anyway, I need to put a piece of wood down in the bottom of that so that when I put my spoons in, they don't just fall out here. And then this needs to be toward the bottom so that you can easily get your dish towel hanging through there. So what I'm gonna do is cut off enough of the bottom of this so that it'll be what needs to fit inside there. And then we'll put this up right on the bottom, and it still gives plenty of room. It already had these, you know, cool holes in here, and so we will use those to hang whatever hardware we want to put on there to hang. I did actually lose a knot out of the bottom of it, so I'm assuming I can still get a big enough piece. I might have to rethink that process. And then this over here is the next one. So this is kind of like a hanger, and you know, maybe an apron hanger or utensil, something that you could put here. I liked this. It has been painted to kind of give it some faux, but it's kind of like this weird metallic. So we're gonna actually sand that off and give it a different paint job. You can see what it looks like. And it just looks like one of those things from Michael's or Hobby Lobby or somewhere, but I did pick it up at the Goodwill for $4. And we'll sand that. I'm gonna go ahead and take this off because I want to take it off to paint it either way. And I'm not sure if I will use a rope hanger, but I think this rope hanger is a little bit long. The other thing that we're looking at is how to attach these. So 2 of them have screws. So the thought was, where this screws onto this, that maybe we can use longer ones that will go through the wood and it would actually screw there. But this one is just a rivet. So the question is whether or not I can cut that rivet and then rivet it to it in a way that will hold it. Because yeah, I could go ahead and, you know, E6000 CA Star Bond glue and it would look great hanging on the wall. It would be just beautiful. But I sell my repurposed items, and I certainly don't want someone to get there and hang something on there and have it pop off. So it's really important that we have them on there in a way that they're going to be good and sturdy. This one too has those rivets, so I'm not really sure how I'm going to do things. And then this one has the screws. So I also haven't decided 100% on the color that I want to go with. I loved the green of that vintage green, but I don't want to use green with my red and make it look like some kind of Christmas decor. I want it to be a nice vintage looking all time. So anyway, we're gonna go ahead and start working on this one and get it done first while I think about what we're gonna do about this, and we'll sand that so at least we can go ahead and have it ready to paint when we figure out how to attach the biscuit cutters.
I'm just using some 220 sandpaper, and I'm just trying to smooth it down and try to keep it from being as likely to have as many splinters, but also just to continue to give it a worn look. I'm kind of working on those corners and those edges to make it a little bit smoother. I decided to go with that beautiful green that we have. Again, I just think it's a really great vintage kitchen look, but you'll see there's kind of a little dent on the side. It had a place that kept catching and it was a little sharp. So I just took a screwdriver and popped that out and sanded it, but I feel like it still just goes with my vintage look here, so I'm not worried about it at all. I'm still really excited about using this board, and I'm really excited about my green. And of course we're really going with that vintage look, so I am using that antiquing wax. I'm just using my little artist brush here because I really want to make sure to get it down in all that texture. There's kind of some dents and worn places in this old, you know, barnwood, and then also there's a little bit of a crack that doesn't go all the way through. It's just kind of a little surface crack, and I really want to get that down in there. And so I'm going to do it the same way. Wipe on, wipe off. One of the things I did off camera that you didn't see was I took my drill bit and I drilled through the board and through the cheese graters to make sure that my screw would fit. And it doesn't go all the way through to the back, it's just kind of from the front. So I am going ahead and screwing those in now, but I did want you to know that I had already done a pilot hole, and same thing with this hole in the back. This goes all the way through the board. It is countersunk, and then it also goes through the cheese grater and into the block of wood that is down inside there. So it just adds that extra stability, making sure that it stays attached to it. And I decided to hijack the string that was on the other board. I am going to just use some D-rings to hang the other one, but I think that rope that was on there will look perfect here. So I am taking some clear packaging tape and I'm just wrapping it around the end of my rope, and then I will cut it at an angle to make it pointed so that it will go through those holes really easily, so that I can poke it through the holes and tie a knot and have a hanger. I will add, I'll clean up the back and add some little felt pads to the back. I've decided that since this rope's going through, I'm not going to put the velvet on the back. Instead, I will just add some little felt, so I add a little felt pad over, even though that screw was countersunk in there, I'm going to go ahead and put the felt pad over it, and then a couple others, just so that when it's hanging on the wall, there's no risk that it would scratch somebody's wall. But I think it looks really cute with this rope. I love that green and that natural of that old worn out rope. Again with my 220 sandpaper, and I am not trying to necessarily get all of the paint off. I don't know what this was painted with, but it is totally gumming up my sandpaper. So I'm just kind of doing the best to smooth it out. And again, it was some kind of metallic over black, so I'm not sure what they were going for or what the person that had it before did, but I just wanted to kind of smooth it out a little bit before I added my own look to it. So just cleaning it up. Then we got to figure out how we're going to attach these. And again, I have those screws on the ones and the rivets on the other. And I think it's we'll start with the two easiest ones. We'll take those screws out of there and look through my stash and find some long screws that will go all the way through the board, up through the biscuit cutter, and into that wood handle that's on top. So those two are going to be really easy to do. So I figured out that I could actually just use some nippers and clip that rivet out of there, and the handle on this one was wood, so I would use the same idea with the screw. And on the last one that had the rivet with the little metal handle, I'm just going to use a screw. I'm going to cut one of the rivets through, and I will use a screw that goes all the way through. So I'm just drilling the holes where they're going to be so that it'll be a lot easier once this is painted to put back together, so that I can go ahead and see. And then I used a larger drill bit that was the same size as the head of my screw to make sure that I can countersink those screws, so that when I put backing on here, it's not going to poke through the backing, or we don't have to worry about it scratching somebody's wall. And you could see where there was actually something written on this board, and that's what they had painted over. But I am going to use the Debi's Design Diary Jami Ray Vintage Cottage Color Crockery. It still remains my favorite of them all, and this paint unfortunately also was left out in the shop. or maybe I should say fortunately, because it is very thick and kind of chunky, but what that means is that it gives really, really good coverage. Look how great it's covering that kind of black and greeny gold color. But I gave this whole board all over 2 coats. I want to be careful not to distress too much of that color I worked so hard to cover. I don't want that black and gold coming back through, but I am going to distress just a little bit around the edges, and then I will kind of just give it a quick sand all over just to get rid of any bumps or anything. And then I am going to use some transfers. I just wanted something on top there, so I have the one on the left where it's upside down is from Redesign by Prima, or Redesign with Prima, and then the other one is actually from the IOD transfer, and I think it's the classic pots. But you guys, I will put all of the materials that I use down eventually in the description for this video. But if you are not used to using these transfers, they are amazing. And of course that Cottage color has a built-in sealer, so I didn't have to do anything to do that, and it just sticks so good to these Cottage colors once they have completely dried. Make sure when you're applying a transfer that your paint underneath has completely dried, and don't try to put a transfer over wax, because that just doesn't work well. I'm not saying that you can't ever do it, and maybe if your wax is cured, but take it from someone who's tried. It's not the easiest thing to do. So you just use this plastic transfer stick that comes with it, and I'm not taping it down or using a ruler on this one. Sometimes, depending on what it is, I might do that, but I am just sticking it down, and I like to go around the outside edges, and then so kind of you can see me flipping it around so that I can get to each part easier, and I work my way toward the middle. And then once it has come completely up, if you start to pull it up and it's not attached, just put it back down and rub some more. But then I take that plastic to burnish all of it and make sure that every piece is adhered to the surface. We're going to go ahead and add some antiquing wax. This has actually gotten hard. Little hack there. If you smack the lid upside down, a lot of times it will help break where it has sealed. You can also run it under hot water and all that stuff, but hey, you saw it work here. Just smack it upside down. So I'm going to apply it with a rag, and just, you guys are kind of getting the hang of this wax stuff. This is a liquid antiquing glaze, so it's not like the waxes where it's a thick kind of paste. This is running like a paint and could easily be applied with a paintbrush, but I just wanted to go ahead and use that rag. And it doesn't do a lot over the Cottage color. I need to seal in my transfer, but you can kind of see just the difference in where it's applied and where it's not. And so again, it's not making a drastic change there. You can see on the left where it's not yet, and on the right where it is. It just helps to kind of age it. So we're going to attach all of our goodies here. So again, I just have some long screws I'm going to stick through those holes, and then I will put my biscuit cutter on the other side. I apologize because I know I'm right at the top of the view and you can barely see what I'm doing. But I'm just kind of measuring where they are now, and I'm trying to do this where you can see it. But I'm poking them through. That's the holes where the original screws were on this one. And so I'll kind of go through there, and yes, my antiquing glaze is still wet, so I'm holding it with a rag, because I have also had things where I've added my fingerprint to items, so I want to make sure I don't sell this with my fingerprint right on the front of it. So I'm just kind of screwing it in with my electric screwdriver here. This is my house screwdriver as opposed to the one in the shop. And then you can see there, they'll just screw up in there real tight. So I will screw that in until the head is down inside where I countersunk that, because again, we're going to put a velvet backing on this, and we want to make sure that our screws are in all the way, and so you don't have to worry about it poking through the backing, or worse, scratching someone's wall. So I'm going to go ahead and get the rest of them all in there. And you can see I needed a little extra oomph there, so I had to set it down. It's really hard to do this where you guys can see it in the camera view. So I apologize because I know there's a lot of it that I do kind of off camera, but this just gives you the idea. We'll do this one more because this is a little bit different. This is just a long drywall screw, and it'll go all the way through the board and gets, you know, it'll be able to grip it, and then it'll go up into that little wood knob. I absolutely love the finished project. It is my vision completely. It makes a great apron holder. You can hang just about anything from it you want. You can see I snuck in an additional bird nest there, but I love it. I used 2 D-rings to hang it, and then I just put a wire across the back. But let's check out all the other reveals of the finished item.
I've been taking it slow. Yeah, I know, God knows I need it. I walk the tightest rope, but the solid ground said leave it. And I never thought I would get here on the other side. In the early morning, it's an age-old story of something new, born again. Like a gentle whisper, I remember winter and how roses always bloom again. They bloom again. I've been saying no, 'cause I know my soul, it needs it. Too many years on the go, and now I'm